How do we pray? Prayer can take many forms: intercessory prayers, prayers of thanksgiving, prayers of praise, prayers of petition, prayers of silence. Today we hear the remarkable prayer of a woman who at first blush has no business speaking to Jesus, let alone asking for a miracle, but who boldly approaches the Lord with faith and determination. This gospel can be a bit perplexing. Jesus seems both dismissive and somewhat rude to this woman whose daughter is possessed by a demon and is asking for an exorcism. So as always, a little context is helpful. Jesus and his disciples had traveled outside of the not-so-friendly confines of Galilee into the predominantly pagan territories of Tyre and Sidon in order to temporarily escape the persecution of King Herod and the Jewish authorities and to concentrate on the apostles' training. It would have been no surprise to encounter a Canaanite woman, a Gentile. The first century Jews, Canaanites, were synonymous with sin. They were one of the primary enemies of Israel, the people who lived in the land of Canaan, in the Holy Land, before the Israelites came in and conquered them and dwelt in that land at the time of Joshua and Judges. So this woman isn't just a Gentile. She isn't even just a pagan. She belongs to the Canaanites, which of all the pagan peoples were the most immersed, not just in idolatry, but also in immorality. They were at war constantly with Israel in the Old Testament. Chapter 12 from the Book of Wisdom describes the Canaanites as follows: "Those who dwelt of old in your holy land you hated for their detestable practices, their works of sorcery and unholy rites, their merciless slaughter of children, their sacrificial feasting on human flesh and blood." They were bad, folks. The Canaanites were this living symbol of a wicked people to the people of Israel. What was remarkable was that news of Jesus' miracles, healings, and exorcism had reached this area. As I said before, Jesus' attitude toward the woman was normal for a Jewish man encountering a Canaanite. They were considered unclean, as were dogs, and to call them dogs was obviously a term of derision. But rather than a simple insult, it seems to me that Jesus was testing the woman's mettle and her faith. He was obviously desperate, willing to accept the insults in order to receive healing for her daughter. She not only accepts being called a dog, but with great charm and wit suggests that even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters. He acknowledges that the Jews are superior, referring to them as masters. She is not deterred. Jesus' statement that "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel," who were the Jews, may seem a bit contradictory. After all, he came to save us all, Jews and Gentiles alike. In fact, today's first reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah speaks of this. Foreigners, meaning the Gentiles, who join themselves to the Lord, ministering to him, loving the name of the Lord, becoming his servants, all who keep the Sabbath free from profanation and hold to my covenant, them I will bring to my holy mountain. So yes, Jesus did come to save us all. However, here Jesus infers that he came first to the Jews. After his resurrection, he commissioned his disciples to bring the good news to all nations, Jews and Gentiles alike. The second reading from Paul's letter to the Romans, he refers to himself as the apostle of the Gentiles and implies that it was a result of the rejection of the good news by the Jews. But as we read in the first reading, it was all part of God's perfect plan of salvation. So back to the gospel. When Jesus encounters the woman, his response is not meant to hurt her feelings or insult her. He's testing her faith, just like he tests our faith. in order to give us an example of patience and prayer. Also, that it's important to ask other people to help us, like the woman did with the disciples. But at the end of the day, we need to be persistent in prayer. If we really want the Lord to answer our prayer, we shouldn't pray once and then give up. Persist, even in the face of difficulties, even in the face of apparent silence from God. We need to entreat him, be patient, persistent, trusting that the Lord hears us. He knows what is best for us, that all things will work together in his plan of providence for the good of those who love him. We can all learn something about prayer from this Canaanite woman. It was as close to a perfect prayer of petition as one could pray. She recognizes Jesus as the Messiah, calling him Lord and Son of David, as opposed to the Jews who persisted in their unbelief. She articulates her need in clear, simple words. She persists, not discouraged by being rebuffed by the apostles and even by Jesus himself. And she expresses her request in all humility, falling to her knees, worshiping the Lord and saying, "Have mercy on me." Our prayers should have the same qualities of faith, trust, perseverance, and humility. St. Anthony of Padua.